right, let's get right into it here after the dramatic downturn yesterday. As you can see here, right here, we talked about the fact that it has broken below this rising uptrend support that this market has been relying on for the last 1 month or so. And also, we also talked about the fact that we've broken below the micro term and the short term moving average. And I think everybody was expecting the market to see continuation to the downside. Well, we wake up this morning and we're surprised by the market. It's a huge gap up this morning, as you can see.
Perfect.
This is where we closed yesterday and we opened here. So in the first and second hour, as you can see with the lower wicks, there's definitely trying to fill that up gap from this morning, but they failed and the area becomes support. And that's the second hour, third hour, fourth hour. Not only that, on the fifth hour, as you can see, bulls went for it to fill the entirety of this down gap. Shenanigans came about when bulls did not fill the down gap, the entirety of it. Yesterday, when we see a big gap up, you see here, that down gap was slightly open. And you see how quickly things got very ugly here and came straight down. And bulls yet again trying to fill that down gap here. As you can see, it filled just a little bit more than what they did yesterday. But they were not able to completely fill this down gap. So leaving some of this down gap right here could be a problem if we do see continuation to the downside, because this down gap can continue to act as resistance. And as you can see how the market behaved yesterday, and people remember this, right? People remember how scared they were yesterday. And not only that, we do have what it appears to be a shooting star candle there on the fifth hour, and we don't have the follow through yet because, as you can see, we closed just right on it. So for the follow through, you need to see at least an hour or two of a bearish candle. So as you can see, it's all going to matter how this market is going to play out in the first 2 hours of tomorrow morning. If the bulls don't go up there and fill this down gap once for all, in the first 2 hours of tomorrow morning, we're going to come back down to retest the micro-term moving average. That's right there, coinciding with the gap area at 456.90. However, if bulls maybe turn this into some kind of a bull flagging pattern, right, after bullish rally we've seen today, and we do see that bullish run up tomorrow morning, and finally, if they can finally fill this down gap completely, and I don't think it's going to act as very strong resistance once if it does get filled, just because it's such a small, tiny down gap that is remaining. More likely, if we do see the rush of buying pressure and fill this down gap here, I could see we're just breaking right through, thrust above it, right? And if we do see something like that tomorrow, that could get us to, as you can see here, the rising resistance. We're talking, we have no known resistance until about 461 here.
You win. Perfect.
And I also mentioned the fact that this is a level where this market is very much capable of setting a trap. If bulls would have turned things around, and if this was some sort of a fake breakdown or head fake or some kind of a trap, you will see some crazy gap up above the micro term and short term, and then this thing rushing back up. Perspective of the market by the way the market decided what it's gonna be, right? So we allow the market to tell us what it is. So now that by adjusting my line here with this peak, and you can see how it's been getting respected 4 times, right? And I see people always drawing things randomly, like they'll draw something like from here to like here. That doesn't really, that's just arbitrary line. You can't just be drawing from here to here because because then you can draw from anywhere. Why don't we just draw from the body and then do that, right? I see that people calling things all the time. How you know when the pivot is a pivot is it gets respected at minimum 3 times. Minimum 3 times. That's when it becomes a pivot or resistance or support. You can't just be drawing lines and then calling it a resistance and a support and then die by it. Right? So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. 3. It has a 3 plus touches, and that's a pivot. Because now we're dealing with this megaphone pattern. A megaphone pattern can be tricky because what's going to happen is it's going to have there's a lot of these zigzags, but it's never going to be like a pretty zigzags. It's going to like zigzag sideways, down, up, sideways, up, down. It could be very hectic. So if I extend it, if we do break out, as you can see, I mean, it depending on how it gets there, you know, if this can go straight up, I mean, I reckon it's going to be more chop. You know, if we do go up, I could see this thing. So you can see if this thing does get to 464, and that sort of lines up with the resistance there, or we get there, pull back, and then ride it somehow, right? So that's what we're dealing with. Again, things can change. Market decided it's no longer want to play with this megaphone pattern, so it could do something different. But until then, we do have to respect the fact that it's not that because I've chosen to name this a megaphone pattern or that I drew this way so that, well, K Kim drew it this way, so it must be the megaphone pattern. No, it's because the market chose it. I just trying to figure out what the market is telling me.
Every living thing that crawls, flies, or squats in the mud wants to kill you and eat your eyes for jujubes.
The oscillator is also dealing with the falling resistance here, as you can see here, 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 and we're just right on it. And because the thrust, right, you see that oscillator, how confident it looks, right? It doesn't look anything like very whipsaw action. It's very thrusty, right? When you have a thrusting oscillator, only way you're gonna kill this oscillator to come right back down is to see a sizable down gap. You see right here, that down gap made this oscillator just fall over. Only way this oscillator is gonna roll over back down, which will favor the sellers, is to see a gap down tomorrow morning. If we do see a gap down tomorrow morning, at minimum, bears want to bring it down to 456 or so to retest some of these moving averages and possibly completely fill this up gap. This up gap from this morning, let me tell you, this up gap, right? Because we've been talking about this slight down gap, how this down gap made things hectic for the buyers, yes? Right? This down gap right here made things hectic for the buyers for days. The opposite is true. As long as this up gap remains open, it's going to make things hectic for the sellers.
Perfect.
So now that we're right on this falling resistance on this oscillator, let's say we do break out above it for the first time, right? Because this price action and also my oscillator been bound by this for about a month, right? Because as you can see, we are not able to get above this range, right? It's been bound by this resistance about a month. So if we do see a breakout, the oscillator breakout, that's definitely going to get the price to retest that 2022 March peak, which is a 461.67, and that's going to be the down gap area, right? We see a shenanigan tomorrow morning. We see a down gap similar to here, which is again in this market, in this climate, in this megaphone pattern circumstance that we're dealing with is that's why most people don't like the megaphone pattern, because when you're dealing with the megaphone pattern, you're gonna see a lot of upside downside shenanigans. We've already seen shenanigans here. There's a gap down, there's a up gap, there's a sideways chop, there's a up gap fade, and then rally, down gap, sideways, up gap, fade. You see, that's what happens. That's what happens when you're dealing with the megaphone pattern, right? So it'll be important how this oscillator behaves going into tomorrow and how this market opens up in the morning tomorrow and how it behaves in the first 2 hours in the morning. And I'm gonna update you guys via my X account at 2KCam, and then we'll see the sentiment, how the sentiment looks like tomorrow morning.